Ghosts, running. What happens when you combine these two concepts? You get a good game.
It's like 15 degrees in here. This was not worth it at all.
But that's what this video is about. Ghost Runner and the second game, Ghost Runner 2. I think both Ghost Runner games are pretty good overall, and that they both manage to do their own thing in notable ways while still being a part of the same franchise and having the same gameplay loop. And Ghost Runner 2 genuinely overall being an enjoyable game, I feel is commendable, because it feels as if a lot of game sequels after a successful first game tend to be less than ideal. So I do genuinely enjoy both Ghost Runner and Ghost Runner 2. However, there is a caveat to Ghost Runner 2. As I said before, this video is more specifically about Ghost Runner 2, but I do think Ghost Runner 1 definitely has its own lists of issues, some small and some big. But overall, I do think Ghost Runner 1 is a good game. But that's not what this video is about, at least not entirely. As I did enjoy playing through Ghost Runner 2, towards the end of the game, there was a feeling as if I was crawling towards the end, as opposed to when I finished the first Ghost Runner game where I was gliding through the end, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, what I'm saying is I did enjoy Ghost Runner 2, but I enjoyed 1's experience a little bit better. And I think the biggest reason as into why I enjoy the first over the second is mostly due to the level design that Ghost Runner 2 has. And now to say, most or a good chunk of the missions in Ghost Runner 2 are very similar to Ghost Runner 1, but there are a few missions where they do try to do something different that I don't think entirely works. As level design between the certain missions I'm talking about in Ghost Runner 2 compared to the first Ghost Runner is notably different, as Ghost Runner 2 has a few missions that take on a more open area type of idea. Not open world per se, but more like being dropped in a decently sized area and having to go between places in that decently sized area. And I'm going to go into detail as into why I really don't think that it works. As one of the first things that made the first game good were obviously its levels. Being in enclosed spaces, I think, really gave into the fantasy of being a Ghost Runner, at least from my perspective, as being stuck in small spaces with large groups of enemies where the only thing that you had as defense was speed and your sword, with your sword being the brush that you would use to paint the blood of your enemies on the wall. These tight spaces and level design really made the game enjoyable and added to the experience of having to be just a blur against your enemies, as that's the only way you could defeat them, because you one-shot them, but they also one-shot you. So it gave into that fantasy of being a glass cannon. And being stuck in such claustrophobic spaces really gave into that, because the only thing that would keep you from getting hit most of the time was your speed, because you didn't have that much area to move in. So you had to use the walls to your advantage, and because you could wall run, being in enclosed spaces also aided in that. And while Ghost Runner 2 again is still an enjoyable game and I do like it, the open areas that they have in the game do take away the experience. Now, again, it's only a few missions. It's not the entire game. It's not even majority of the game. It's a good chunk of it, but it's not all of it. But it's enough that for me it was problematic, because there were still missions like the first Ghost Runner in Ghost Runner 2. Whenever you would get stuck in these open areas, it would exacerbate how much worse they would feel to me. Again, it didn't ruin the experience, but it didn't really improve it in any way either. Having open areas that you would either fight in or travel through kind of took away the experience for me and lessened the idea and fantasy of being the Ghost Runner, you know? And if you mention Ghost Runner 2, it's very obvious you need to mention the bike, as that is a very important part of its gameplay loop. Overall, I think the bike is a good idea. It works, it's enjoyable. The only problem that I personally have with it is not being able to turn the camera while you're on it. For me personally, it makes it feel worse. I wish that there was an option to change that so that you could turn while looking in a different direction. Perhaps on console, it's nowhere near as bad, but for me personally, it can be disorienting at times, having to only look the direction I am turning or facing on the bike. However, while I do think overall the bike is enjoyable, it is also part of the open world problem, because one of the main ways that you travel through said open world is with this bike. And so whenever you need to go from point A to point B, you need to use the bike. And again, the bike is fun, but the open areas really aren't fun. So whenever you're going between areas, it's not very enjoyable. Now the thing is, on paper, having to travel between point A and point B on the bike is a good time to take a second to breathe before you get back into another combat encounter. But the first Ghost Runner, in my opinion, had that as well with its parkour puzzles. And while they weren't entirely the best or the greatest, they did switch up the gameplay and slow it down significantly, giving you time to breathe, but not in a way that took you out of the experience of being a Ghost Runner. Time that you travel between areas in Ghost Runner 2 on the bike just feels slow, and half of the problems you run into, at least in a few missions in the open area, is just trying to find a way to get the bike from one side of a wall to the other side, and it gets a bit annoying at times. Again, not ruining the experience, but when I believed I did it the third time, it was a little tedious. And the thing is, the bike can work in favor of Ghost Runner's gameplay loop, with the on-rails sort of fast-paced set pieces that they have you go through on the bike. If I'm not wrong, I believe there's two, one at the beginning of the game and one towards the end, and these work. As far as changing up the gameplay loop for Ghost Runner while still keeping the base fundamentals that make Ghost Runner fun, it works. It's fast-paced, relies heavily on reflexes, and planning ahead a split second before you need to make a decision. It really works, and it's really fun. But there's only two of them, and most other times you are using the bike is simply for the sake of traversal, and not really in an enjoyable way. Ghost Runner 2 tried something new and was doing something different for the sake of trying something new, which is commendable, absolutely. Trying new things is a scary thing, especially when your previous game already had a formula that for the most part was liked. It's hard to switch it up in a way that is good yet different when you already have something that worked. So this isn't me trying to bash them for trying new things. You try new things sometimes and it works, and other times it simply doesn't. For me personally, I don't think that this. However, I am really looking forward to if they are making a third game, because if they take what works well in the first and the second game, then it absolutely has the potential for a genuinely amazing third game, and I'm really looking forward to that. But before I keep going, I should say a few good things that I did like about Ghost Runner 2 that were improvements or were different from the first in some way, shape, or form. As I said before, the bike I do genuinely think is an overall great addition. I just think they need to make better use of it and have more on-rail set pieces that fit it way better. I do think the wingsuit that they add at the end of the game, or that they give you towards the end of the game, is interesting in concept but a bit boring in execution. I think if they find a way to make it feel better and handle better, then perhaps they can add more puzzles to using the glider. Perhaps they can give you the ability to glide up and down and give you traversal related puzzles akin to the Batman Arkham games, where the use of, Batman gliding around has a skill floor and a skill ceiling to it. I think that could make the wingsuit very fun and very enjoyable and give an extra layer of challenge for players to have to learn a new mechanic. I do also enjoy the fact that they added a dedicated blocking button, which is a welcome change, as one, it gives you the ability to block not just parry, so there's an added defensive option. And the new abilities and the way that you use them have also been very enjoyable, like being able to rocket jump with the Tempest ability, the new ultimates that they added, like just laser hand. I don't like that they turned a normal ability in the first game into an ultimate. That might have been for the sake of balance. I haven't played Ghost Runner 1 in a little bit, so the abilities in the first game might have been a bit stronger than I remember. That's why they turned it into an ultimate, I don't know. But overall, I do enjoy Ghost Runner 1 and 2, and I am looking forward to the third one. I just think Ghost Runner 2 was held back by an idea that just didn't fit it very well. And I am looking forward to what happens in the future with the franchise, as long as there's a future, I don't know. But Ghost Runner 2 is fun. I like it, but I'm more inclined to play the first Ghost Runner or play the second one and just choose level select and avoid those missions. And I didn't really talk about the story because for most people, I believe, that's not really the main selling point for Ghost Runner. It's not bad, nothing against it. It's passable, it's decent, I like it, but the world building and the world itself is pretty enjoyable as well. The idea of a giant tower being the bastion for humanity as a whole, as if only really humans can live there and only there, and living there has its problems as well because humans love ruining things. So the story's fine, but otherwise, yeah, I like Ghost Runner 1, I like 2. I'm really looking forward to what happens with the future of the franchise. I appreciate you taking the time to sit here and listen to me ramble, and I hopefully will see you in the next video. And if there's any topic that you would like to hear me speak about, or a completely different genre you want to see me dabble in, feel free to say something. But otherwise, I hope you have a good day and a good night, and that everything in your life goes right. Thank you for watching, and I really do hope to see you in the next video. But you taking the time to click on this one and listen to me talk this far into the video is more than enough. So again, thank you for watching, and goodbye.